Hey guys, it's RC. I am back to do a video, possibly a short video series, but just a video for right now. This is going to be a kind of a pre-review for a new game just released today, actually. It's not a new game, but it is a new release for the game. As you know, if you've seen any of the reviews on my channel, I am very much into sports-based sim games. And you'll notice here in my Steam library, I actually have 4 versions of this game called Out of the Park Baseball. Marcus Heinzen is the owner and developer for this game. He's out of Germany. And let me tell you, baseball's supposed to be the American pastime. Marcus has pretty much stolen it away from America and brought it to Germany because he is a baseball nut. And he basically puts out a new version of the game every year. I started playing this game with version, oh, what version? No, yeah, version 3, I think. I had read about it, and of course this was back pre-internet days too, in the USA Today's Baseball Weekly publication, and they had an advertisement in the back section in the classifieds, and I ended up picking up the game and really enjoyed it. I think the game hit its stride in version 6 and version 6.5. That was when I thought that was the probably the peak of the game. Now since then, of course, they've added a lot of new things, but I think version 6, to me, in my opinion, was really the perfect game, and really enjoyed that. But there are online. You can play this as a solo player. You can play it by yourself at home on your computer. You can join online multiplayer leagues. You don't play head to head, but you do set your lineups, your pitching rotations, and we'll get into a lot of that. But you basically set everything how you would want it as the manager of the team, and then you upload your file, and then the commissioner, whoever the commissioner of your league is, runs the sim, posts the results, puts up a new file. And that's one thing from the multiplayer aspect that they have really done that has made it extremely easy to basically download and upload your files with just the push of a button, basically. So I have not fired this up yet. I did. I lie. You're seeing that right here. I had it open for 20 minutes, but I was actually doing some other stuff. I just wanted to open it up, make sure it would load. I have not actually gotten past the start screen. So we will look at this together. Again, I'm not sure how many videos I'll do for this, but this is just going to kind of be a basic walkthrough, probably geared more towards new people that haven't played the game or haven't played it in a while. Keeping in mind, I am in a league for version 17. That's why it's still installed. We've upgraded from version 15 to 16 and previous versions, which I had actually on the computer. So we're going to go ahead and hit play. This is the Steam version, but you can get it on a disc version as well, or a direct download version for your computer. He's already on 18.1.33, so he's already put out a couple of patches, it looks like, even though it just released today. So those are probably patches that released, if I had to guess, in which I'm doing, in the beta process. And basically this tells you what it is. If you've never played the game, it is an advanced baseball management game. You manage a team, you run a team, and you make all the decisions around the team. And just like in real life, there are a lot of factors that you have to keep in mind. I'm going to leave that here for right now. Typically I would turn that off, but just as I start playing this more, I may want to refresh myself. There's an online manual. There are videos, which hopefully this my video or videos make it into that list, and there are also pretty detailed forums that are very active and have been evolving over the years. So let's go ahead and get into the game. So here's our load screen. This is new. I don't recall this in the previous versions. Looks like you can actually log into the forums within the game. So that's kind of neat. I'm not going to do that right now. Here's a couple of things. So first off, recently, I guess in the last couple of versions of the game, Marcus has actually gone out and gotten officially licensed with the Major League Baseball Players Association. So what does that mean for you? You have the real teams, you have the real team names, real team logos, real player names. Those are all in the game, and that's huge. Previously, we were able to do that to a certain extent, but it did require mods that a logo pack, and then there was in fact it was called the Layman database. I think I'm pronouncing that right, but there was a guy and I forget his first name, but his name was Layman, and he put together this huge database of players, and it's the entire history of Major League Baseball, literally going all the way back to the 1800s when it first started with, like was it the Richmond Spiders? A little before my time, but so you have historical games, and you can start at any season between 1871 and 2016. Whatever year you choose, it will create the league in the image of that year. So if naturally, right now, the Astros are in the American League, but just a few years ago they were in the National League, and a few years ago the Washington Nationals did not exist. Of course, there was a Washington Nationals. They moved, became the Texas Rangers, and now the Washington Nationals are back. So whatever point in history that you choose to play in the historical game is what you'll get. It may be a point in time where there was no DH. It may be a time, so there's a lot of stuff that you can choose. And here's the great thing about this game. Very, very customizable. And pretty easy to set up as well within the way that they have the game done. So you have your settings. You can do a custom game. You can import from a previous version, so that's always nice. You can schedule it. This is something I don't recall seeing before, a historical exhibition. So, we always have those discussions. Who's better, the 1970s Big Red Machine or, say, the 1950s Murderers Row New York Yankees? Well, here you can play a historical exhibition between those two teams or a series, and you can find out in the game who was better. Everything in here is season-wise, and then once you create a league, then you would load from a previous save, or this will actually light up and continue from your last save point. So if you only have one league, this will be the option you would probably use. And then if you don't want to play historical, then you can play the new standard game, and that's with the actual 2017 rosters. Now, what happens when I progress a year? Well, then it becomes a fictional game, because they don't release or sell any player packs. There are some games that do that make you buy a new pack, and that can get pretty expensive. And I'm not demeaning their games in any way. I just, that's why I think Marcus puts out a new version every year, because, basically you get any tweaks, any enhancements, new bells and whistles, plus you get the updated rosters as all a part of that new release. So that's one reason there are so many people in the OOTP community that have been with this, like myself, for forever. So if you figure we're on version 18 and I started at version 3, I've been playing this game to some level for 15 years. and I'm almost 50 years old, so I started playing this game when I was about 35. So this has been pretty much a huge part of my life, and other people too that have been playing it for a long time. So custom game. This is where you can create fictional teams, make up team names. You can set up your own, um, you know, league design. I want 5 divisions with 3 teams in each division. You can do that in a custom setup. Basically, if you can think it up, you can pretty much create it in here. I'm always a big historical buff, so let's get into kind of looking at the game here. So hopefully everybody, I'm going to enlarge this a little bit. There we go. So let's go ahead and create a new historical game. Alright, so this is the challenge mode. I've never seen this. If you enable challenge mode, streamlined gameplay, new achievements and awards, extra challenges. This differs. Commissioner mode and player editor are disabled, which honestly, basically that allows you to cheat if you're so inclined. You can go in and you can turn a player into King Kong if you wanted to, and you can screw every other team over if you had that in mind. But I honestly never used those. It was kind of my own decision. But certain league rules and settings are disabled. AI control disabled. Long-term sim is only available during the off season, so it forces you to probably play out each game, which I'm not going to do that. I don't like actually playing out the games. I like to sim the games, and I'll sim a week at a time. Maybe a game, but you actually have the ability to go in and play, to actually play the game itself. And you'll notice here you are not logged into your OOTP account, which is this part up here, mainly because I don't remember my password, so I'll have to look that up later. And I'm certainly not going to log in and show anybody my password right now. Don't ever do that, by the way. Alright, so we're going to say no thanks to the challenge mode, at least for right now, but whenever you start a new game, evidently you will be given this option. Alright, so it brings you into your creation wizard. All right. I became a baseball fan in the mid 1970s, so that's typically where I start. Ron Guidry went 25-3 for the Yankees in 1978. His nickname was Louisiana Lightning, and he was a kid from Lafayette, Louisiana, which is where I am from. So I was always a big fan of him, although not of the Yankees. I was a big fan of Nolan Ryan, who was with the Mets in the late 60s and early 70s, and then went to the Angels. So I usually dial it back. You have to keep in mind, if you have a favorite player or group of players, you want to start a little earlier for when they're coming into the league or something of that nature. Sorry for the pop-up there, guys. So I like Guidry. His big year was 78, but he was around a little bit earlier. I don't want to go too far back into the 70s. So I'm going to start 73. I believe Ryan was still with the Mets. I'm going to come up and start in 75. Okay? So now here's what you can do. You can import the complete history. So basically, everything that happened from 1861 or whatever it was, 1886, whatever it was on that first step, that will be the history. So whoever, in your leader books, in your record books, all those records will be intact. You can also import real minor leagues if you want to. Now remember, the more you bring in, the more data there is, and the more it could potentially affect the game. I've never had any real lag issues with Out of the Park, but you never know. I always tend to kind of err on the side of caution with too much information. And then if you don't want the real players, you can have it do random players from all eras. Now what does that mean? Well, we were talking about Ron Guidry and Nolan Ryan and Johnny Bench and the Pete Rose and those guys. Well, if you use random players, well, you might end up with Shoeless Joe Jackson from the 19 teens. He might be playing for one of these teams, and you might have Roger Clemens coming back from our modern era to play for these. You might have Justin Verlander coming back from today to play. So it'll be randomized on. You might have Mickey Mantle. You might have you might have just think of a name. Tris Speaker, Bob Gibson. He's in this era a little bit, but it'll be randomized. So you could have players from the 1800s, you could have players from the 1980s, you could have players from 2017, and they could all be jumbled together on these teams. That's interesting, and then you can even go advanced. And there's a whole lot in here. I mean, I don't want to get into a complete how-to because I don't really know everything about this, but I keep it pretty basic, so we're going to go with that. Now, the database. If you have your own database, now this path came with the game. This is a default path that comes with the game. And you can choose, so if you want players to be ranked on their entire career or a 3-year period, I think 3-year period is your default because every 3 years every year it will readjust the player based on the last 3 years, and you get a more true picture rather than say if you put the entire career. Because let's say you had a guy that came in as a rookie, wasn't very good, and it took him 6 or 7 years to kind of hit his stride, and then he had a good 10-year career and then trailed off and then kind of hung around for 3 or 4 years. Well, you're going to end up with that 3 or 4 years at the end and the 7 years at the beginning really impacting the entire window, and he won't see the high ceiling of his peak period that you will in the 3-year period. By doing this, when he hits his peak in real life, he will also hit his peak in the game. Now, this is one reason I actually like playing with fictional players, because then you don't have the preconceived knowledge or expectations of what real players did in real life. Now, keep in mind, this is a simulation game. They are not going to be identical. So if you draft Ron Guidry and he went 25-3 in that 1978 season, he might go 11-17 that year in your game. He'll have the same ratings, but he could have completely different results based on the team around him, because you may not have the same players, and he won't pitch each game exactly like he did in real life. It's still a simulation. It should be close. So we're going to end up just kind of going with the defaults here. But that is something that just shows how in depth you can, and in detail you can do things in this game. We're going to go ahead and do, this is going to take a minute, so bear with me. If I had the ability to pause in these videos, I would do it here, but that's how it goes. Let's see. This is kind of neat. While things are loading, or you'll get these little historical notes. This is a comment from Richie Ashburn. Houston is the only town where women wear insect repellent instead of perfume. That's kind of funny since I actually live in Houston now. Haven't smelled a lot of insect repellent, but there are a lot of mosquitoes. So I guess that's his point. So there's some interesting quotes, there's some interesting historical notes that come up in this section, and they're kind of interesting to read, and there's a lot of them, so it's always nice that you don't see the same things over and over again. And there's old stuff, there's new stuff. Wes Helms and Hanley Ramirez, that's more recent. Abraham Lincoln, of course, a little older. All right, so basically what it's doing now is, we told it we wanted to import the complete history. It's importing all the players for 1975, putting them on the we're going to have the option, if I remember correctly, because I honestly haven't started a league of my own. I've been playing the online leagues. All right, so here's the next step. We're at step 2. Do we want real historical transactions or not? Use historical lineups or not? Basically, what this is, we mentioned Nolan Ryan. He was with the Mets. He got traded to the California Angels. If we choose that, then that will really happen in our game. If we want to leave it and let history change, so it depends on what you want to do. So I never use that because I don't want to replay history. I want to create my new history and see what happens. And what's neat about this is if you do that, there was a guy that most of you probably have heard of, but if you're a newer baseball fan, you may not. He played for the Detroit Tigers. His name was Mark Fidrich, and they called him the Bird. And his gimmick was he would talk to the baseball. He was very eccentric. But his rookie year, he had this magical season, and then he hurt his arm. He was never the same, and basically he was out of baseball relatively quickly. Never recovered from the arm surgery. This was in the 70s, prior to successful Tommy John surgeries that players do sometimes twice or 3 times in a career now. And it's not a big deal. Back then it was potentially, it was career ending. So it's interesting to see what may have happened with him had he not gotten hurt. So that's that's one of the things that I like. So I leave those off. Select what minor leagues you want. Well, I typically go with just the basic ones. You can do all these other ones. No right or wrong way. It just depends on what you want to do. Requiring full minor league rosters. If you don't have that, you might only have 4 guys, 4 fielders. It will put in ghost players. No right or wrong way. So we're going to go ahead and advance. We're going to recalculate player ratings before each season using their real stats, so their development will change, but there is ways to change that. So if you wanted to do a replay league where it was, you're trying to be as exact as possible, in 1961 when Roger Maris hit 61 home runs, and you want that to really happen, then you want to disable that. But we're going to keep that in place. And that changes things. So, your guy may not turn out at quite as good as he was. Nolan Ryan may not be a strikeout machine. He may end up being, hurting his arm and having to develop a junk ball arsenal. I don't want to do an expansion draft. I just want the teams assigned. And I do not want to automatically expand the league. I was not a big fan of expansion. In fact, the current thought process on contraction, I'm actually in favor of. I think the talent pool of players is spread too thin, and there's too much talent. There's too many players in the major leagues today that never would have made the major leagues before. I don't begrudge them the job, but do they need a job playing Major League Baseball rather than being a manager at Outback Steakhouse or something? I don't think you're guaranteed that in life. So, like I said, there's people playing today that, 20 years ago never would have made the league, never would have even gotten a cup of coffee. So I don't like league expansion. All right, so it turns your financial settings on automatic. If tickets cost $2 in the 1960s and now they cost $50, we'll see that progression with that checked. So let's go ahead and go that. Scouting accuracy, player. I like 1 to 20. That's just me. Sometimes I like 1 to 10. Actually, I like 1 to 10 better. 1 to 20 gives you a little more dialed in because you might get a 8 or a 9 and they might be a 7 or an 8 on a 1 to 10 scale. A 1 to 20, if they're a 19, that's that would be the equivalent. You might see a 9, 9.5, 8.5 on a 1 to 10 scale. So that dials it in a little bit more. Everything's a little more precise. The 20 to 80, I think, just kind of gives a window, but I'm going to go with 1 to 10. All player ratings. All right, face gen. They have face packs, so when you look at a player, we're going to do major league players only. All coaches, scouts, and managers. Normal. Next. All right, let's see. We're just going to call this OOTP18 Solo League. 1975. Autosave once a year. I'm going to put, I'm going to be the manager. Come on. American. And yeah, we'll just keep the default stuff there. We want him to be old enough to actually be coaching, I guess. 45. So he's about 30 years old. And you can be the manager, the general manager, or the GM and manager. Your choice. So if you only want to put the team together and be Billy Bean, that might actually be interesting. I think I'm going to do that. I don't think I've ever played that way before. Now what you do here is the manager makes the lineups, the depth charts, the batting order. So all you do is put the team on the field. Well, no, I want to do both. And you can play in commissioner mode, which allows you to control other teams, edit players. Basically it's an option to cheat if you feel the need to do that. And you cannot be fired if you want to do that, because if you don't check it and you do badly, the owner, which you can't be the owner, can fire you. You can start unemployed. Honestly, I don't like that option. I've used that in previous versions of this game, and to me it just takes too long. You end up becoming a manager in say single A ball, and it just takes a long time. So we're not going to do that. Let's see. I'm going to start with California. You can randomize names if you want to. And we will start the game. So while this is loading up, let's go ahead and call that a video here in the start. I will do, we'll walk through a little bit of this to get you into the game. So look for my next video or two as we kind of get into the game itself and look at the different screens. And then I'll probably do a recap review video. So there'll be a couple of videos, but I try to keep them short so they're watchable in one setting. This is going to take a little while, so hey, thanks for checking this one out, and we'll see you in the next one. Take care.